going to talk about some MS Ignite containers and a roundup. What happened at Ignite, and not just Ignite. I think what happened last couple of weeks, maybe last couple of months. Well, not months, but at least last couple of weeks. What was announced? What went from hidden preview to public preview? What went GA? I'm just going to have a little chat about that. Richard. Supposed to be fun. So if you got any questions, remarks, or anything, just put them in chat or unmute yourself and just let us know. So my name is Wesley. I work as a lead Azure architect at Intercept, and I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP. It's not about the big Wesley show, so I'm not going to talk about that any more than that. And I'm together with my colleague, Richard. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Richard Hooper, Pixel Robots Online, Azure architect at Intercept, also Microsoft Azure MVP. And yeah, that's probably enough about me.
Oh, that was fast. That's good. So
got a lot of content.
Yeah, I think me and Richard, we work together, obviously. I think we got about 5-6 calls a day. We talk to each other every day, which is fun. It's always about containers. Because I mean, if you work with Richard Hooper or Pixel Robots, it's going to be about containers, right? So for today, I think by the end of this talk, you will be up to date what's new with containers in Azure. We're going to go through the subjects. We're going to talk about some new feature, AKS node pool, start and stop. Why would you use it? How does it work? Net gateway integration. I think that's got some great use cases. One of the interesting ones, obviously, is going to be Azure Container Apps, which has prepared a good demo for that. Personally, I'm really excited about Open Service Mesh, even though it could be questionable on how much you would need a service mesh in AKS for lots of scenarios, but I'm still really excited about it. And we're just going to go through everything. We're going to open up a browser. We're going to talk about it and see what our opinion is, see what the use cases are. I think some of those new features might sound like something you don't necessarily need, but they could be there to solve a problem. And if you look at it from an enterprise perspective, lots of them will be a solution. So we just want to go through them and explain them to you. So Richard, let's get started. Let's just get started with the start-stop on Azure Kubernetes Service.
Yeah. So
do we use it?
We don't use the node pool start-stop yet, but we can start and stop the whole cluster, which we do for a few customers. But you can find issues when you stop and start a whole cluster because the startup order can go wrong with your ingress controller or your system node pools. So now this new awesome preview feature, you can just stop and start certain node pools. So you can keep your cluster running with the bare minimum stuff. And then say you have a massive GPU node pool and you don't want to pay for that all night long or all over the weekend. With this preview, you can just stop it and then start it again when you need it. So you're saving all that money, which is amazing.
And would you say that the bare minimum is just going to be the system node pool?
Yeah.
So with this new feature, I mean, instead of starting a whole cluster, which can obviously give issues with ingress controllers and the system node pool being down and being started again, would you say that if this comes out of preview and it becomes GA, would you say start on a cluster level and do it on a node pool level?
Definitely. The amount of issues we've experienced firsthand stopping and starting a cluster, Kubernetes wasn't built to be stopped and started. Microsoft have sort of shoehorned that in to the control plane part of it. So being able to stop and start a node pool without having to scale down all of your services, your deployments to zero, it's so much easier. One command instead of, right, let's scale that down, and then I might be able to scale down. This way, it just saves it all, shuts it down, and then when you're ready, start it back up. Definitely the way forward.
So the new thing for saving money on Kubernetes or Azure Kubernetes is going to be stop starting the node pool. Not the system node pool, just the node pools that are costing you money. Just to be really transparent here, how many hours did you spend debugging stuff because people did a stop start on a cluster?
God, quite a few. This week alone, probably 10 hours or so, maybe just alone this week. Yeah.
So not are you only saving money on the node pool, you're also gonna save money on people like Richard having to debug that stuff. So go with the node pool.
Not the cluster.
That sounds fair. That sounds fair. And then we've got another one. I really like that one. The NAT gateway integration. What do you think about that?
So this is really good because, especially if you're an enterprise customer, you're connecting to all these other services, and most of the time, all these other businesses, and they want to IP whitelist your cluster. Normally, you would set an egress point or use Azure Firewall, but Azure Firewall costs a lot of money, and now you can actually just either use an existing NAT gateway or create a new NAT gateway whilst deploying a new AKS cluster, and all of your egress traffic will go out through this NAT. You can have an IP range associated with this NAT as well, 16 IP addresses as it says on the screen. And then that's the range you give all your customers, and all of your clusters could talk through this NAT going out to everyone. IP whitelists fine, not having to be scared that your IP address might get deleted because it's always going to be associated with your NAT gateway. Just put a delete lock on it. And it's definitely the way I think it should go, because otherwise when you build a AKS cluster to start off with, it usually uses the first IP address of the load balancer that gets set up unless you're using firewall. It's just going to make life a lot easier for enterprises and small businesses who need that sort of IP whitelist for the egress traffic.
And just to be clear, you could already put a NAT gateway as an egress for your AKS, right? You could just deploy it yourself.
If you used routes, so you had to have like when you set up your cluster, you have to do the UDR routes and that, and then route it out. But then you had issues with the ingress and all that stuff. So this is making it a lot easier, and it's actually supported by Microsoft now, rather the other method wasn't. So if you did set it up like that, then Microsoft wouldn't support you, or would be very off trying to support you. They wouldn't really care too much, shall we say. Obviously, if you had Azure Firewall, you could put the NAT gateway in front of the firewall and do it all that way. But again, costs. Not everyone wants to spend money on Azure Firewall when you don't really need to.
Yeah. So the big change here is that you can now do it from AKS. That is and it's supported. I think it's it's one of those customer questions where they happen once every so often. And then you're just going to go, how the hell am I going to do that? And this is the answer. If they want to whitelist or allow list specific IP addresses, then NAT gateway, that integration is gonna, it's going to be the answer for you and your customer. That will be, I like it. I think we've already deployed some NAT gateways now, even without this feature. We did the unsupported one, but we should migrate over at some point.
Definitely.
Even though GA. Preview is better than, I would still say preview is better than not supported at all, but we'll see. We'll manage for now.
Yeah.
All right. And Dapper.
Dapper.
I mean, Dapper.
Dapper. What a tool.
But yeah, I think, it's great. It's an extension for Azure Kubernetes Service now. It's been around for quite a while now, and you can see that Microsoft is really pushing on using Dapper. I mean, look at ACA, Azure Container Apps. I mean, it's got Dapper integrated, but
slightly different variation of Dapper, mind you, but it is integrated.
It is there. It's not the Dapper that if you would do it yourself, it's not going to be the exact same Dapper. But yeah, for those of you who haven't used Dapper before, Richard, why is it so good?
So if you are a software developer, you want to integrate with, say, Service Bus, RabbitMQ, or something like that, or Event Grid. Usually you write code or you find a library and everything. But with Dapper, you can just integrate it, a couple of lines of code. You can talk to whatever service you want. So it's kind of like the building blocks of microservices, like the Lego of microservices in a way. And you can just do so much cool stuff with it. Like I say, out of the box, it just works. You don't have much configuration to do. You don't have to worry about maintaining third-party libraries or anything like that. With this AKS add-on extension, you don't even need to worry about updating it because Microsoft does that for you. So that's like super cool as well. I really like it. And as you can see here, MTLS support between your services inside the cluster can be done with Dapper. So do you really need a service mesh? Because that's why most people want a service mesh, but Dapper can do it for you. So
if you just need the MTLS, right, would you do something like, so we are both a big fan of Linkerd as opposed to, because the answer was always people wanted to do that in, that's why they did Istio and all that kind of stuff. And then we just go, well, you can just do Linkerd because that is the only feature that you need. It's a lightweight way of doing that. Would you do Linkerd or Dapper if this is?
So if I am doing it just from a IT infrastructure perspective, I would go Linkerd. If I can get in at the development stage, I would say, guys, go look at Dapper and use it because it's going to make your life a lot easier going forward. But you always have that time where the developers have already built something and you need to run it, and that's when Linkerd is going to sort of fill that void. But then you just get them to add it to their sprint. Say, one of their sprints say integrate Dapper.
So it's queuing, it's state, it's a lot of other features, and it runs as secrets. It runs as a sidecar, right? So it just exists next to your container itself.
Yeah,
that's important to know. It's
a lot easier.
I like it. I think people should use it more often. But I think that's the challenge when you engage with a customer. Normally, you're doing the engagement once they already built the application. So you're going to have to resort to things like Linkerd or a service mesh. If you can get in at, like Richard said, that development stage, and you can engage with the developers and they're still working on it, then Dapper is definitely, the subject that you want to talk about. I mean, if you can have them use Dapper, it would solve so many infrastructure, well, not issues. It would bring down overhead on the cluster because you need to install all those additional infrastructure features like Linkerd or service mesh, or, do Istio. Look at the overhead just on the cluster. And that's why we do things like Linkerd, but that's still overhead. And if you're already, if you're still developing, then Dapper will take away all that overhead. It's still a sidecar, but it provides so many features. It will become part of your solution. So if you're a developer or if you're engaging with developers, I would promote the Dapper thing. Just think it's dapper.io.
Yep. It's super easy. Microsoft are pushing it big time. It's just become part of the Cloud Native Compute Foundation in the incubation phase as well. And if you know Donovan Brown online, just follow him because he's pushing it so much. It's like he's in charge of Dapper or something now. So any questions, direct them to him.
And he did a couple of sessions on it.
Yeah. And they even have a office call like every 2 weeks as well, which you can join. Anyone can join, go and ask questions, talk to them. They've got Slack groups as well.
DapperCon.
Yeah, DapperCon. They had that recently. So a lot of effort going into Dapper, and it's definitely where you want to start going down.
Yeah, definitely a good idea. So, and then we got, I call Richard on this one. What horrible thing happened in your software architecture that you need AD? But there is a thing to this. You can enable group managed service accounts, or GMSA as they call it, for your Windows Server nodes. So that is basically, Richard, but correct me if I'm wrong, it's just Windows AD integration.
Yeah, so it's weird because it also uses Key Vault, so it stores like the authentication token in Key Vault, and it talks to the Key Vault. It has some pods and controllers sitting inside your AKS cluster that talks to the Key Vault. It talks to a managed identity in Azure as well, and then your Active Directory talks to the Key Vault. It's all crazy, but for big enterprises who's got legacy apps that they're starting to migrate to containers, this is the perfect solution because most of these big legacy apps use AD authentication, and now you can use your group managed AD authentication for your IIS app. So this is only for Windows containers. So hopefully you're lucky enough never to touch Windows containers, but if you do and you need legacy Active Directory authentication, this is the tool for you.
And I would say that this is like if all else fails in your communication with the customer, then you could do this. I mean, just get rid of AD authentication. Just try to get rid of it. Redo that stuff. You don't even want to bother with that. But yeah, I mean, if it's there, if you need it, it's there. Obviously, still in preview, but
it's like here the actual domain controller needs Azure Active Directory Web Services enabled. So you're opening up ports on your Active Directory servers, and personally, I'd never do that. But yeah, make sure you have private link enabled between your AKS cluster and your domain controllers, and keep it all super secure if you ever go down this route.
I mean, try explaining that to your security team. You need to open up some ports on the domain controller. They'll go, what? Probably not, buddy.
Yeah.
All right. So Azure Service Operator v2.
Yes, this one's cool. So
it's still in alpha.
Yeah. No, this is GA now, isn't it? I think. I'm sure this one. Yeah, the project's alpha, but I think this went GA with support in Azure. But Azure Service Operator, what is it really? And it's a way for you to deploy Azure resources via Kubernetes YAML manifest inside your cluster. So if you've got an app and it needs to spin up a new MySQL server, you can actually do that from your YAMLs or from your Helm charts. So if you've got a development team, they created a YAML file, but you don't want them to have point and click access inside Azure or anything like that. You block them, but you've got all these permissions set up already inside your cluster. They can just use GitOps or just apply it using a Helm chart, and it'll go off, create the MySQL database for them, then create the website, and then create the storage, and then the CDN or something that's needed. And you can do it all through your YAML manifest rather than having ARM templates or Terraform and then doing your YAML files for Kubernetes. So it's just a nice, easy way to do your deployments through Kubernetes. It's kind of like crossplane.io, if anyone's seen that, but just Azure related.
It sounds a bit like the concept of cluster API, but useful.
Yes, yeah, it is a bit, because cluster API just lets you deploy other clusters, whereas this lets you deploy lots of other resources, which is cool.
I mean, you could deploy new AKS clusters with cluster API from an existing Kubernetes cluster in Azure or anywhere else, but this is just next level. I think that this would open up some use cases for us as well.
Yep, it saves me having to do PowerShell or CLI or ARM templates to deploy resources to go with a customer deployment. Say we've got a new customer coming onto an AKS cluster, but that customer gets a new MySQL database. I have it all in my YAML. Bang, done. Thank you very much. Everything's done. Happy days. I don't need to worry anymore.
So does it leverage like managed identity or?
I think so, yeah. And then it calls the ARM template, I think, in the ARM REST API. But yeah, it uses a CRD inside the cluster, which is quite cool.
Yeah. So there's some good examples here as well.
Yeah. So there, it's using a service principal by the looks of it. Just in that one there. But I'm sure you can do managed identity as well. It's been a little while since I looked at this. Last time I looked at this is when I was writing the book, helping write the book for the hands-on Azure Kubernetes book, third edition. So, yeah. So
basically what we're saying is, when would you use this, right? What would be the use case? I think that would be if your environment is mainly Kubernetes plus additional services, so Azure SQL or MySQL, and you want to onboard new customers, which means running the Helm chart, provisioning the ingress stuff, provisioning the pods for that specific customer, and optionally a database, because we don't store state in containers. You want to store it in the database. That would be cool to just deploy one Helm chart with the YAML in it to do this, as opposed to having, like you just said, the additional PowerShell, because then it would be like, let's provision with ARM templates or Bicep or PowerShell or Azure CLI, wait for the database to be done, grab the connection string, or store it in Azure Key Vault, and then provision the containers or the pods and all the other Kubernetes resources. Now it could just be one file or one deployment. I think that's an incredible use case.
Yeah, definitely.
And even though it probably didn't get as much attention as a lot of other stuff, I think this is going to be big.
Yeah,
I think we're going to be
it.
Yeah, we're going to be managing a lot of stuff using the operator.
Mm-hmm. Especially with crossplane.io coming out now as well. They can do multi-cloud as well, so not just Azure. This is just Azure, but the crossplane.io can do all your clouds. So go and have a look at that as well, and it's very similar to this.
And well, obviously you want to use AKS, not
yeah.
Amazon Kubernetes EKS or.
But with Azure Arc now, you can control it all through Azure, so it's all fine, you know.
Did you use this to provision stuff in AWS?
I don't think you can do this one, but Crossplane definitely can. This one I think is just Azure.
Honestly, I think they should add this to Azure Arc.
It would be quite cool.
Something with that. I mean, that would be the answer for multi-cloud managed from Microsoft Azure, right?
Yep, definitely. They should buy Crossplane.
They should. Someone from Microsoft in the call? You should buy Crossplane. All right. We got another one, and it's the Azure Key Vault provider for the secret store, the CSI driver in the AKS cluster.
Mm-hmm. Very important one.
Don't think that's that new.
So this the actual newness is it went GA finally, but it's been around for a little while. It used to be a Helm chart deployment, but now it's an AKS add-on as well. So you can actually do your AZ AKS upgrade, add this add-on on. And the benefit of this is you can connect all your secrets from Key Vault into your containers and run, and it sort of mounts it as a file inside your containers. So only your containers can see the secrets. You can also get it to synchronize with your cluster if you want a Kubernetes secret, but probably try not to do that because, you know, they're only base64 encoded. Whereas here, you're mounting the secrets inside it as environment variables. You can then query them in your code and everything like that. Super secure way of doing it. You can use your pod identity or your Kube API identity to connect to the Key Vault and pull all the secrets down. And the best bit is the secret provider class inside it, which you have to supply. It's just a YAML file. You can say which secrets out of Key Vault. So you don't get all of your secrets, only the ones you tell it they're allowed to see, which is awesome.
It only mounts the ones that you define, right? Yeah. Do we ever deploy a cluster without this?
Not this is part of my baseline now. And if a customer is using secrets in Kubernetes, I say, right, we're going to get your app sorted so we can actually use this. And most of the time they say, fine, that's good because, you know, it ticks that security box. Every now and again they say, oh, in the next sprint, but I keep pestering them and one day I will get them.
And it's not that much work for a developer, right?
No, it's not. You know, most of the time we could even put a little PowerShell script in at the beginning to set the environment variables for them or stuff like that. So it's not hard work, but definitely push it if you can.
It's definitely, even when it was still preview and even before preview, we probably already tried stuff with it. Every customer runs it, every single one of them.
And
if they don't want it,
I was just going to say, you can even use it for your ingress certificates. So if you don't want to use Let's Encrypt, you can actually have your certificates up in Key Vault, and you can do secret rotation, and it will only attach to your ingress pods as well, which is amazing. So every time you update in Key Vault, 5 minutes later or so, that certificate's now on your cluster ready to be used.
And that was the question I was going to ask after this, because a lot of people that use or that want to use Azure Key Vault integration with AKS are like, but when? If I update my Key Vault, when is it available in the cluster? Because obviously it's not change it, do your kubectl, get the secrets and stuff, and it's there. It takes a couple of minutes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can set the time you want to wait. There is no default for it. You actually have to enable it as an option for the key rotation, and then you can say 5 minutes or so forth. I think 5 minutes is usually enough. Yeah, that's cool.
No, it's good to know that you need to tweak that a little bit to make it useful for you. But definitely, you know, the best practice that people need to do.
Yeah.
If you do AKS, you do Azure Key Vault, period. There's no questioning that. Right, and then we got Open Service Mesh.
Yes, so this has gone GA as the AKS add-on, and we've spoken quite a lot about Open Service Mesh, and it is okay. It's getting better.
So here's the thing, right? We've got Open Service Mesh, developed by Microsoft. Then we've got Dapper, developed by Microsoft. Both now CNCF projects.
Mm-hmm.
But they are like a little bit competitors, right? If you do it from a development level, then it's got to be Dapper.
Yeah. Then
If
do
you're
you
not,
need this
then
service mesh? No.
probably not.
Yeah. But one good thing about Open Service Mesh is it will be supporting Windows soon. And because it's Envoy based, they will, I believe, put in a ingress controller inside it. So you won't need to worry about Nginx ingress or App Gateway ingress. You could just do it all through the Open Service Mesh, which could be quite a benefit over Dapper. But still maybe use Dapper because it's got your secret stores and stuff like that, and your easier developer story.
Back to before we go, the Dapper secret store. How does that conflict with Azure Key Vault?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't actually know that one, and to be honest with you, maybe I think, does it not actually use Key Vault?
That's a good question. Let's just figure that out.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
I mean, Dapper. Well, let's figure that out, because I'm just thinking if I ever want to manage secrets, it doesn't really describe it like that. But I think we should figure it out. I'm just thinking out loud here. Because I'm using Dapper to manage secrets. What if I've got Key Vault connected as well?
Yeah, you can use Key Vault. I just Googled it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. So you could do Dapper and Azure Key Vault.
I don't know if you can see that. There you go.
Yeah. Azure Key Vault secret stuff. All right. That's good.
Cool.
That's
live
good.
debugging, live
debugging. That's how that's how our calls go every day. What if we tried this, or what if we tried that, and we just start Googling both and then see who comes up with the answer first? Usually it's Richard. Sometimes I'm fast enough to find something. But so yeah. I think we can just, obviously you want to engage at a developer level. So with you, Open Service Mesh, I played with it a little bit. I played with it more when it was an alpha stage. Didn't like it back then, but it was alpha. Mm-hmm. Just to be fair. I think, if you're using something like Istio, then you could consider going to Open Service Mesh because it is a good add-on. People thought about it. It was developed for AKS. It works.
And you don't have to look after the management, the upgrades of it or anything because it's an AKS add-on.
I think before, because we've been talking about add-ons for a couple of times now. What is the benefit of doing add-ons as opposed to installing it yourself? Because you can still install Open Service Mesh yourself. You can still deploy a lot of stuff yourself. Yeah. What would be the benefit, or what is the benefit of doing an add-on?
So the benefit for me, obviously, is I don't have to worry about updating the installation at all. Microsoft deal with all of that. It's tried and tested their best practices with it as well. So I don't have to go and worry about figuring out all of the Helm installation switches that I need to set to make sure it's nice and secure in my cluster. So that for me is the benefits of it 100%.
It's upgrades. It's update, because if you got production work, how many times do we not see that with customers? They install stuff themselves. Then in a year's time, you're gonna look at it. Oh, it doesn't perform that well. I think the integration with Azure Files was a good one. Mm-hmm. That needed upgrading. It was you would install it manually. Yeah, it wasn't upgraded. There were better versions out there, but you're going to run into performance problems because nobody pays attention to did you upgrade it. And now with the add-ons, you don't have to worry about it.
No, it's beautiful.
It's going to be there. Yeah. So that is why you would use Open Service Mesh as opposed to Istio, just for the upgrading.
Yeah.
Upgrading Istio, managing it, sweating before you have to do it. Just the nerves themselves use to do that. So now we are. Yeah, this is quite a controversial one. Quite a discussion about this, but you can now just make a node pool snapshot. So if you would go do an update, snapshot it, doesn't work, roll back.
Yep. Or if you have a production cluster, you want to do an update to it, but you're scared something's going to break, so you snapshot your cluster, your node pools. You then spin up a new cluster in your test environment, use this snapshot as your node pool image, and then you've got a mirror copy of your production, and you can just deploy all your apps to it and see how it works. I'm still not 100% sold on this one. I can see enterprises liking it because they can see it as an easy rollback for upgrades, because you need to upgrade your AKS nodes like every time they do a release, so weekly, but no one ever does. Maybe this would help.
Yeah, this is where I started questioning stuff. I think we had this call just a couple of hours ago. I'm like, why the hell would you do that? Because, I mean, if you run Kubernetes, it doesn't even have to be AKS. You want to have source control. You want to have a repo with your YAML, your Helm, or whatever you use. You've got your daemon sets configured. You've got everything that you need. You've got deployments. You've got it all really tightly configured. So you could deploy a new cluster, press enter, and deploy all that stuff over again. I mean, if you've got that, why would you take a snapshot? Why not just deploy, if you want to upgrade a node pool, why just not deploy a new node pool? Deploy all the YAML, all the Helm to it. See if it works. And if it works, you migrate.
Yeah, I think this is more suited to the enterprises because of the rollback plan, personally.
I think it's to give people a good feeling. I feel very secure updating my Kubernetes cluster because I made a snapshot.
Yeah.
But I mean, really,
it's all about the backups.
If you're doing cloud native and you're doing it right and you're doing infrastructure as code, you don't really need it. But I do know why it ticks some people's boxes, but nah. Yeah, I like it. I think it's good.
I wish they could have spent more time with other features that we're still waiting for. But yeah, that's just me.
Teleport.
Yeah.
We're all waiting on teleport. Yeah, so mind explaining what teleport is? I think we all think it's really important, very important. I think if you know what it is, for anyone listening, you will find it important. But
So yeah, when you pull down an image onto your AKS cluster, depending on the size of it, it could take minutes. With teleport, they're using some special technology and local storage and stuff. It's seconds. So this is going to be a game changer. You won't need to pre-stage your nodes with your images and stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to be cool. But they keep saying, "Oh, it's coming," and then they go quiet. It was meant to be out in October, but we're November now, and it's not here.
Yeah, because now you have to resort to things like FletchD to have your images cached. But what we really need is teleport for Windows.
Yes, because Windows containers are massive.
Exactly.
Yeah, something like that, Wim.
Yes. Yes, that is. I think the teleport container images pulled with teleport might be even faster than that.
Now the one everyone's been waiting for.
Yep. Azure Container Apps, and we did another session a couple of weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I think we said ACA is Kubernetes for
AKS
preschoolers.
for preschoolers, yeah, it really is. It's special, shall we say?
Are we saying it sucks, or are we saying it's got use cases and treat it like that?
It's a good way to get into the world of containers if you don't want to learn anything. And I've got a few YAML files which we're going to compare to show you the difference between an AKS Kubernetes YAML and a ACA YAML, which is supported, but not in any of the docs. So I did some digging and found out, because I think it's important to know.
I think you mainly figured out that some stuff is just broken by design, so that might need some fixing. The reason why we say ACA is like AKS for preschoolers is if you watch the keynote of Ignite and you watch the Scott Guthrie keynote, he said it really well. He said ACA is a stepping stone. ACA is you want to get started with containers. You don't want to bother with all the complicated Kubernetes stuff, because we did other sessions on AKS being an IT ops platform, and even though developers start with AKS, like we're going to do this, and then you want to go to production, and then the result is, all right, we want to go to production, and then we'll go you cannot develop your way out of this. You need ops people. So it actually does take quite some time and effort to get a AKS environment up and running that's ready for production, it's secure, it's scalable, and that you don't have to troubleshoot it every single day. ACA is a good way to start if you don't want to deal with all that. But it's fair to say that if you're ready for the real thing, that's what Scott Guthrie said. If you're ready for the real thing, then you're going to go to AKS.
Yep.
You got a demo to compare the stuff, right?
Yeah, so I said demo, it's just more of looking at the slides. So let me just share this screen here.
And just before you get started, Wim is saying, so it's a use case when you don't have any infrastructure people in-house. I would be careful with that.
Yeah, I would say to an extent, yes. Oh, there's Wesley. Let's move him over there. To an extent, yes, but you're going to hit these limitations very fast if you've got good developers, I think. And if your app isn't built for web-based stuff and you want to do communication over non-web traffic between the containers or the pods. So yeah, on the left here, we've got a bit of AZ CLI, but so this basically would create all of the infrastructure we needed for the app service plan, not app service plan, the Azure Container environment where you then create your app. So let me I'm just going to run this quick because it shouldn't hopefully take too long. Let's go put that and paste that in there. See if it runs. If not, but basically the YAML looks like this here for a, oh God, I made it too big. Let's get rid of that. Let's make that smaller.
And meanwhile, did you fix your command line?
Yes, I did.
VS Code. It was horrible yesterday.
It was horrible. It broke. PowerShell 7.2 broke. But yeah, so here what we're doing is this. This is a type Microsoft Web, so Microsoft.web container app. So straight away it's telling you it's for web. Whereas in AKS here, you got the API version, and then your kind would be, say, deployment. So already there we can see a difference because there's no kind in here. Then we have the template section and then containers. So the template section is very similar to the Kubernetes template section, but we have all the metadata inside it, and then we have containers. So back into containers here, we've got the Redis container, which is the same here, but we call it Azure Front. And the image, so that's very similar. Then we've got the environment variables, again, super similar. But what you're going to notice here is this is containers, and that's like your pod level. So your container apps is your pod, say, and your containers are your containers inside it. Normally in AKS, you would only have one container per pod unless you have your sidecar or an initialization container, init container. But to get Redis to work inside ACA or any service that needs to communicate over non-web port, so no port 80 or 443, so like Redis, because it needs to go over 6379, you have to put it inside the same pod, otherwise it won't work at all. Whereas in Kubernetes, you would always put your backend pods away from your front end and put your network policies to make sure it can only talk over the certain levels and nothing else can talk to it. But you can't do that in container apps. It has to be in the same thing. So you sort of lose that security boundary straight away. And another thing is you can't use persistent storage. So I've got a Redis cache here. Yes, ideally I would put this into a PaaS service, but for development, you might not want to do that because it costs money and you just want a quick service you can spin up when you want to. So as soon as I start like doing anything in Redis with this application, then it's going to basically, if I restart the container, all my history is gone, all my cache is gone. Whereas in Kubernetes, I can connect it to storage. So like I've got persistent volume claims here, and I can say mount that so this is an Azure disk, and I'm mounting that to the pods. And now with the new CSI drivers, I can mount multiple pods to the same Azure disk. That's new, super fast as well. So it actually works quite well. And I'm starting to believe persistent volumes and persistent state inside Kubernetes for certain things is okay, whereas before I would say never. So we're getting it slightly changed now because of how quick this is, and you can use ultra disks as well now. So like, it's really strange. And then this one here, this containers apps ID, is the whole resource ID of your container apps you have to put in there, like the whole massive big ass string. And who wants to write that inside a YAML file? Not me. So here I'm creating the YAML file using sort of simple bash, and I'm getting it here from an AZCLI to get the variable, and then we would just apply the stuff and then hopefully get like a URL. Let's just copy that and paste that in there.
So while you do that, I think this is also the answer to Wim's question. I mean, if you don't have infra people in-house, would this be the use case? Richard said yes to a degree, because if you let developers go have their way with this, you're going to be creating quite the monolith. And that is probably, I mean, from a scaling perspective, that's probably not what you want. I mean, what if you need more instances of your Redis?
Yep.
It means you're going to have to scale up the whole thing. Whereas the whole idea behind containers, and if you're going to do microservices instead of containers, and then you got the pod, you want to have it in separate pods, because those are the entities that you scale. Well, it will be the deployment in the pod, but you get my point. That is what you want to do. So yes, for very small things, it could work.
Yeah, so basic websites, but most of the time you'd run those in static apps or app service, but it might get better. Hopefully it will, and hopefully they're taking feedback. I've noticed the Git repo isn't very active at the moment, whereas I like to see it like the AKS one, where you get a nice public roadmap and everything like that. So hopefully one day that will come. And I think it potentially could be beneficial, because, it does take the ingress stuff away. So like now in AKS, you have to deploy an ingress controller, you have to deploy services and ingress objects and stuff like that. Whereas here, you just deploy it with this kind of manifest here, and it automatically creates you a nice URL, which you can then CNAME to, and it has your certificate already created for you. And hopefully it is planned that it will allow custom DNS names, probably only with Azure DNS, and then hopefully custom Let's Encrypt certificates or whatever Microsoft's using in the back end. I think it might be DigiCert or something like that. And then it might be better, but again, just for web apps, you can't start running your Redis caches or your sort of RabbitMQ clusters inside it, or your simple messaging systems. It just won't work. So if you could do everything where it's only PaaS services and you have a web front end in this, yeah, that would work. But most people find that's not the case. They want to run cron jobs. They want to run all this other stuff, which they can't run in ACA. So yeah, that's my thoughts on ACA at the moment, and the comparison between the two YAML files, and how you can see Microsoft are saying it is a web-based system rather than what Kubernetes is. Hence why we say ACA is AKS for preschoolers. Hopefully that makes sense.
And it doesn't seem like you can easily, grab the YAML and migrate to Kubernetes. That's something you need to take into account.
Mm-hmm.
So what about things like Helm? Can you use Helm to deploy to ACA?
No, at the moment the official supported methods are Pulumi, ARM template, Bicep, CLI, and YAML once they start running the docs for it.
Why on earth would they pick Pulumi over Helm? I mean, if you're going to do something with third-party integration, it's going to be containers. You want to have Helm, right?
Yeah, you would think the manifest files would be interchangeable between the two, and you just change the kind, to say Microsoft Web Container Apps or Container Apps instead. But no, at the end of the day, ACA is running AKS in the back end. So why put this extra layer of, in my eyes, complexity for when you want to migrate up to AKS in? Just go learn AKS. It's a lot easier.
So you could say that, I mean, if you go back to Wim's question on, if you don't have infrastructure people, you don't have to deal with the ingress service, the ingress resource, ingress control or ingress resource service and pod thing. It does that for you. Mm-hmm. But giving away, not having to know that also means that you don't have the flexibility to manage that. So I think for enterprise or production scenarios, in any company, I mean, if you want to run your blog or anything, ACA would be good, right? But anything production ready.
If you could talk to the storage via API, if you can't, then it's not even good for a blog.
So I know you're going to talk about bursting from AKS and stuff, but or virtual nodes.
Mm-hmm.
But how is this the end of Azure Container Instances?
Potentially, if they work on ACA to integrate it with AKS and allow easier different types of pods to run, different types of containers to run, and allow that communication to happen internally, create an internal service that is presented to the AKS cluster so you can talk to the pods rather than the weird fully qualified domain name that they currently use. But yeah, hopefully it will be all right.
One thing, I think I'm seeing this as something that's got huge potential.
Mm-hmm. Just not quite yet. Maybe they released it too soon.
And maybe we need to make it fit better for the people who work with Kubernetes every day, like us. But then again, I mean, maybe we're not the audience. We could go as far to say that, right? Maybe we are not the audience. I think it does make sense, especially from a commercial perspective. I mean, everyone's going to containers. Some people find it difficult to get started with AKS, so it would be a good stepping stone, especially to train yourself, get the knowledge. But once you get the hang of it, once you get the hang of Kubernetes or containers in general, and you're thinking on playing with Kubernetes with the YAML, once you overcome that steep, because I mean, let's be honest, it's a steep learning curve.
Yep.
But once you overcome that, you'll quickly move on to AKS. I think that would be the conclusion to this.
Mm-hmm. Definitely agree.
All right. We're already been going on for 55 minutes now.
Ah, cool.
So that is it. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. I mean, you can always just go on Twitter and ask us questions.
Always open. DM's open to everyone.
I think Richard created a community thing.
Yes.
On Twitter.
There's Twitter, Azure, containers on Azure.
Yeah. Containers on Azure. And we have to mention this.
Yes.
By tip of whim, I have to say, Festive Tech happening December 1st. Lots of people signed up. It's going to be lots of great sessions. Yeah. So please feel free to just check it out. Check out the website, share it, have people watch all the sessions. A lot of people put a lot of effort in, so that's only fair. And do check the donation page, Richard. What we're doing, Girls Who Code.
Yeah, Girls Who Code. So April Edwards, who works with Microsoft, to help set this up for us. Basically, if you like the content and you've learned something and you can afford to donate to Girls Who Code and you want to, please do. You can click the link and it will help out. We've got a target of, I think, about £5,000 to try and raise for the whole month of December. So any contribution you can do would be amazing. It's a really good charity.
It is, definitely is. All right.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
So thank you guys for the really nice session.